Hi there, how's it going? Andrew here, and welcome to Sketch Endeavor. Now, if you're new here or you're new to my channel, let me take a quick minute to tell you what Sketch Endeavor is all about. Now, I've been a professional artist for the last 15 years, and admittedly, in that time, I've noticed some plateaus in terms of my painting ability. I figured that I wasn't dedicating enough time to drawing. In fact, I let drawing fall by the wayside, and consequently, those limitations in the sketchbook were starting to show up at the easel. I'm after constant improvement. I'm looking for it. I always want to feel like I'm leveling up and that I'm growing in some way. And so for me, this is my effort to try to push my painting skills as far as I can push them and try to start to see some of those improvements. And so now I've dedicated some time each day to drawing. Now personally, for my Sketch Endeavor time, I've dedicated 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I'm shooting for that 10,000 hour target. Now, there's this idea floating around out there that it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. Now, sure, I already have some drawing and painting ability, but I want to push it as far as I can possibly push it. So I've set myself the challenge of 10,000 hours. Now, at the rate of 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, I'm going to be sitting at this drawing board for the next 17 and a half years, which is quite a task. Now, personally, I'm quite attracted to a challenge like that. It doesn't put me off at all. In fact, I'm really looking forward to it. And already, 3 weeks in, I've only done a little bit of this, and I can already start to see some improvement with my work. Now, hundreds of people out there have joined me on Sketch Endeavor, and they've also committed some time each day to drawing. And it doesn't have to be 2 hours for you. It could be 20 minutes, an hour, whatever you can spare. The point is it's about the time that you commit and making that a habit and showing up consistently. If you show up consistently, whatever that time is, I guarantee one thing, you will start to see improvements in your work. Now, over the course of the last couple of weeks and in response to the first 2 episodes of Sketch Endeavor, I've received a lot of questions and comments through social media or through email. Now, I'm going to be responding to some of those questions and comments through the narration of this video. It's not necessarily a drawing tutorial, although I will explain a little bit about the materials and the processes that I'm going through as I create some of these drawings. So without further ado, here's episode 3 of Sketch Endeavor. I'm moving out of the sketchbook now and onto some loose paper that I have taped down to a board, and I'm going to be sticking with the same themes that I've been dealing with in the previous weeks of Sketch Endeavor, and I'm still wanting to know more about the horse. So here I'm going through my photographic references and looking at all sorts of different pictures of horses that I've shot over the years and just trying to learn more about their anatomy, looking closely at that photographic reference, and as I draw across the animal, trying to work out how they're put together and trying to feel each muscle as I mark it out with the pencil. It's a long and slow process, and maybe this isn't the best way of going about it, but I've found that this is almost an elaborate form of note-taking, and it's been really helping me to understand a bit more about this animal. Now again, once I reach a level of proficiency putting these horses together, it's my hope that I'm going to be able to drop them into some paintings. Now the paper you see me working on here is a gray paper. This is actually made by Clairefontaine. It's gray 250 gram A3 sheet, again taped down to a board. And I thought that this horse would actually make a really good little study model to work out the contraction in those muscles, both the forelimbs and the hindquarters as well. Although as I draw this out, I'm drawing it completely freehand. I'm not actually tracing any part of this or transferring any part of that photograph across. I'm just drawing straight what I see. And that's helping me with my hand-eye coordination. It's helping me to judge the shapes and forms in relation to one another. All in all, it's a pretty helpful exercise to just get to know the animal a little bit better. Now, I saw something come across my Instagram feed recently. As is often the case with social media, there's a lot of ideas floating around there and lots of comments and lots of different philosophies when it comes to art. And I found this thing that just kind of Well, it rubbed me the wrong way. Let's just be honest about it. And I'll tell you what it is. And it was somebody commenting on an excerpt that they found in a book, and it rubbed them the wrong way. And this is indicative of a lot of the things that I hear. So let me just share this with you now. Now, I'm not sure which book this came from or who the author is that this person's referring to, but here are the quotes. There is very little value in drawing from photographs. Many great draftsmen consider accurately copying a photograph as being non-artful. Okay, so how about this one? Slavishly rendering a photograph shows no real understanding of the subject or the principles of good drawing. Nice. Okay, here's another. Artists who rely upon photographs to copy from will never have the power to create. Oh, that one hurt. Okay, I got one more. Always remember, to copy has no value because copying is a mechanical imitation, not a true statement of nature. Ouch. Now, I don't know about you, but I've heard crap like this since I left art school, from people who just are all too keen and eager to share exactly what they're thinking. And that's fine. Look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, I suppose. But for me, drawing like this has real value. That's why I'm doing it. I feel that I'm getting an enormous amount out of that. And I don't actually have anybody to please but myself. The object here is not to produce a pretty picture so that I can hang it on my wall and have something to be proud of. It's actually to produce a drawing to better my understanding. And I feel it's actually doing that. The act of making marks on paper gets better and better the more you do it. And maybe this is just copying a photograph to learn a little bit more about horses, but we still have to engage our hand and our eye and our brain and use that coordination and develop that even more to just do this in the first place. Now, don't even get me started on artists from the past who used photographic references. Like, so many of the 19th century masters that I hold in high regard used daguerreotypes, which were the first photographs to become commercially widely available in the 19th century. And a lot of artists even shared their photographic references. You know, we have artists like Holman Hunt, who is a fantastic painter. He was able to achieve those textures, surfaces, and materials and forms because of the photographic reference. So he was using these references and he was taking his paintings so much further. And if we go further back, there are artists like Caravaggio who used the camera obscura. Photographs and the photographic process are absolutely everywhere in art. In my opinion, it's absolutely a valid form of creation. And I think that people that shun this idea think they sound fancy when they say this. They think it must be terribly sophisticated, I bet, to cast this judgment on other people. And I think it's dangerous in a couple of ways that I'll explain in a minute. By saying this, they're elevating themselves. But I bet secretly, somewhere in the dark recesses of their studio, they have a dirty pile of photographs that they're copying too. And they just crap on us other artists for using photographic reference, trying to make us feel ashamed about it. Well, I don't. I actually feel that this is really valuable. And I think anything that resembles a statement like that, that stifles creativity and makes people out there really question whether they should go for something, I think that's incredibly limiting. And I think it does a lot of damage. And consequently, I get emailed from hundreds of people who feel like they need permission to be able to create however they create. And so here, if this inspires you, what I'm doing here inspires you, I'm using photographs. I think it's okay to use photographs, even if you want to copy a photograph. Do what feels right for you. And don't let any limiting belief or any statement from anybody hold you back from expressing yourself. That is the role of art. You get to decide what you want to say and how you want to say it. Okay, well, that is my rant over. Thank you for indulging me. Now, look, I'll just explain a little bit more about what you're seeing here. You saw that first horse kind of was a little bit goofy, and this is going to happen throughout this process. I mean, we're here at 14 days into the challenge, and there's a lot of days to go, and not every day is going to be great. That previous drawing, it was a bit off in terms of the pose and the musculature. But then again, this is the idea behind sketch endeavors, just throwing yourself in there and practicing and doing it again and again and again, and changing your approach slightly when you start to do this again and again. It's not a wholesale change. It's just a couple of little tweaks to the process to get you closer to your goal. So here I stuck with it, but I was a little bit more careful and more deliberate about how I laid out the initial construction lines of this particular animal. And consequently, I'm happier with the pose. I'm happier with the musculature. And I've taken more time with the mark making. This white charcoal also goes down beautifully on top of that gray paper. And I'm keeping these highlights away from that graphite so I don't get it smudged. I'll explain a little bit more with the next animal. But I'm enjoying where the tonal aspects of these drawings are going. It's got a bit more of a sculptural feel, so it's definitely something that I want to explore more of. I believe now, after drawing for the last 14 days, I'm starting to speed up and I'm starting to see these small improvements in the process and in my ability. So far, that's not a huge commitment of time. I mean, here we are, day 15. I'm going to do another horse, but I'm starting to compound that experience that I've just had and apply that experience directly to these new drawings. And because it's not a long time between drawing sessions, I feel that that accelerates that improvement. If it was going to be a very long time between drawing sessions, you can imagine that some of that knowledge and information that I've gathered might be forgotten in that time that's passed. So it's really important to stay on top of it as a daily habit in order to really accelerate the learning process. Now, I'm following a general rule here that is actually quite similar to the way I paint. I'm starting off loose and light, and I'm building up the construction lines of the animal first. And once I'm happy with this, then I start to block in major masses of tone. And my favorite way for building up the tone in the animal so far is using a softer pencil, something like a 4B. And I've got a Staedtler 4B that I like to use. And that really helps me establish some of those deeper, darker areas of the animal. And then I'll go around and I'll start to smudge this and blend this into some areas. And then I try to preserve areas where the highlights of the animal are going to be. And that makes it easier to lift out highlights with an eraser. And here I've been using a Tombow 2.3 millimeter mono zero eraser. Once this is done, I go back with a mechanical pencil like you see me using here. This is a 0.5 Staedtler mechanical pencil using a 2B lead. And I really love applying these fine hatching lines over the top of this smudgy undertone drawing. And the combination of that smudginess and that form with the combination of those sharper lines over the top, this really defines the animal so much more, I feel, and it really creates an engaging, really interesting surface. If you want to know anything about the materials, the pencils, the paper, the chalk, whatever I'm using here in these drawings, you're going to find all of that information in the links down below. Now, you probably know that I'm a huge fan of goals and goal setting, and I always like to begin with the end in mind. So when I started Sketch Endeavor and committed to drawing for 2 hours a day, the end in mind was I wanted to make my paintings even better, knowing that drawing and painting go hand in hand. If we can't draw, we can't paint. A lack of drawing ability will seriously affect what we can turn out at the easel. So here I'm trying to force those improvements at the easel again, having felt that at times I go through these plateaus where I'm not seeing much of an improvement, and I like to constantly push and grow and try to be as good as I possibly can be. Now, again, this is not out of competition or comparing myself to others. This is just trying to be as good as I can be for me, maximizing my own personal ability. And it's not just about the ability to draw, but it's also the understanding of the subject itself. I admire greatly artists from the past like Remington, who understood horses, in my opinion anyway. Some of his cowboy and western paintings show a real understanding of how the horse is put together, but also how it moves, and consequently his work is incredibly dynamic. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that he studied horses at length, and that's how he became such an authority when it came to painting them. So here I'm trying to do the same thing, study the animal, really focus on how it's put together, on the placement of the muscles, the veins, and how all of those fantastic reflections shine off the hair. It certainly is a lot to process, and the only way I can process that is by putting in the time and just chewing through it mentally, one drawing at a time. And I certainly do have a lot of time ahead of me. This sketch endeavor is no 100 days or a 30-day portrait challenge. I'm committing to 10,000 hours. But I've had a few people say, well, you'll probably master it before you get to 10,000 hours. I appreciate that, but I probably won't, because I know that once the 10,000 hours is up, I'm probably going to put in another 10,000 hours. What does it mean to even be a master in the first place? I may have discussed this in the previous episodes, but this is a theme that I've been really wrestling with because I know that the work will never be finished. Hopefully, I'm still learning until the day I drop. And the idea that I would ever stop learning is quite depressing to me. I want to continue to grow and just strive to understand more and more and more. It's also amazing the perspective that you get after you've put in a significant amount of time. And I'm not saying that I've done that yet, but even here, with the amount of time that I have put in, I'm starting to see the growth and that progression. This is one of my favorite horses that I've drawn, but the thing that really excites me is how I'm going to look at this particular horse in 2 months' time or 2 years' time. How am I going to feel about this drawing that I'm relatively proud of right now? I'm willing to bet that at that point I'll know exactly where I could have improved the situation. Now at 17 days in, I thought it was time to try a new subject. And this is Marlene, who works at the local cafe here in the town where I live in New Zealand. I thought Marlene would make a great portrait, and she very kindly agreed to sit for a couple of hours while I knocked out my sketch endeavor time. This formed a new challenge, and working from direct observation was incredibly valuable, but it certainly goes without saying it is quite tough to do. Drawing things very lightly with a number H Staedtler pencil on that gray paper again. And then just once I have everything in the right place, or so I feel, I go ahead and mark this out with a much softer pencil, here a Palomino Blackwing. Now the paper here is a bit of a lighter gray. This is a Canford card in Dreadnought gray. It's not acid-free, not that I know of, but it's a much lighter gray, and I thought it would be more appropriate for Marlene's skin tone and allow for a bit more contrast. Now I'm blown away and really encouraged by how many people are using the hashtag SketchEndeavour when posting their work to Instagram and sharing this process with others. It's just how many people out there are committing to improving their artwork, knowing that it's a long road ahead, knowing that this is no 30-day or 100-day challenge, that this is a daily commitment to themselves to improving their artwork. I mean, that's amazing, the sheer level of commitment that others have displayed. So I've been following that hashtag pretty closely, and I've been receiving a lot of comments and questions through Instagram as well. Gabriella wanted to know, do I keep drawing for more than those 2 hours, or do I stop drawing after the time passes? And I've gotten this question in a couple of different places, so I'll go ahead and answer that here. You probably have found the same thing when you're drawing. Once you start and once you get on a roll, it's very difficult to stop. There's something about it, it just gets you. And when the time's up, it's almost like, I didn't get it done in time. No, I'm going to keep going. And consequently, I found, I'm not sure about you, but I found that I've spent sometimes 4 hours to 6 hours sitting there at the drawing table to just try to get the drawing right, or just maybe do another one, that I get in such a groove with it that I just want to stay there and keep going. So once it gets you, it's really got you. And this is great. I think it's a really fantastic place to be once you start doing that. At first, it's going to seem like pulling teeth. It's going to be a chore. But once you start, you're going to start to see those improvements, and then you're going to start to get addicted to the process. You're also going to start to get addicted to the challenge as you start to introduce more subjects and different kinds of subjects. A bit like what I'm doing here with drawing a portrait from life. The challenge aspect of it is starting to really get me hooked. Now, I'm reasonably happy with this drawing, but I know it's not perfect. And that little thing, that little voice in my head, I'm trying not to let it destroy me or discourage me. I'm using it as an indicator that I'm not where I want to be and that there's room for improvement and there's some growing to do. And the only way to do that is to get back to this drawing table and do it again and again and again and get more people to come into the studio to sit for me and keep drawing these portraits from life. A bit like the horses. Keep drawing those horses and you'll understand more about the anatomy, more about the subject, and you'll be more of an authority to talk about it when it goes into a painting. So to answer the question, no, I don't try to limit that time and stop strictly at 2 hours. But once I set the commitment to myself and I say I'm going to do at least 2 hours, that's the only thing that I'm firm on, is that it has to be at least 2 hours a day. Now, admittedly, there have been a couple of days here and there where I haven't gotten my 2 hours in. But then I go back the next day and I make it up. And if I go back to make it up, the rule I have for myself is if I skipped the previous day or I was an hour short, I have to add an extra hour on. So I was sick the previous week. And from there, I made sure that I went back and instead of doing 2 hours on one day, I ended up doing 4. So this last week was 15 hours of total drawing time instead of the 12 hours per week that I'm supposed to be doing. Now that live sitting finished up and I thought, okay, well, I could really do better. I'm going to try this again. I'm going to use some photographic reference and I'm really going to study Marlene's face and try and make a new portrait and see if I can be happier with the final result. I've changed my approach slightly here. I've changed the paper. I'm using a Canson pastel paper here, which is a mottled gray. Again, a little bit of a lighter tone, but this has a bit more tooth to it. And it's my idea that that toothiness will hold and grab that graphite a little bit more, and I'll be able to layer on a bit of darker tone. This time I'm using a graphite pencil that's been in my kit for years that I've never actually drawn with. I just bought it from an art store on a whim years ago. But now it's time to bust out the Super Furby, which is made by Lyra, which is not a bad pencil. I've enjoyed that, and it's laid down the tone quite effectively, and it's smudging out really nicely too across this textured paper. Now I want to give a quick shout out to Nita Clairefontaine artist on Instagram for her wolf cub sketch, which I thought was absolutely exquisite, an exceptional drawing. And she said, "It has definitely been more difficult than I thought it was going to be, taking the time to sketch every day, but I'm going to keep going. #SketchEndeavour." Well done, Nita. This is an amazing drawing, and I'm really just blown away by your skill. I'm really looking forward to seeing where you get up to on this journey as well. It's going to be a lot of fun to check out your progress. And another shout out to Daniel Ang Art. Day 10 of #SketchEndeavour. I wanted to really focus on my values and apply detail in my sketch this morning. I feel like I'm slowly getting the hang of it, and I actually had quite a lot of fun with this one. I'm sure, Daniel, you can see, and a lot of other people can see as well, that once you start, it does start to get a lot of fun. You end up sticking with the process, as I was explaining, and getting a lot more out of it. The more you do, the better it gets. And again, it's not a competition or a race with anybody else. This is about taking your abilities and your skills up a notch by making the commitment of the time and just committing that to yourself and just putting in that every single day. You're going to start to see those improvements. I guarantee it. And a shout out to Nicola Oldenhoff, who said, "I saw today an inspiring video from amazing Andrew Tischler artist." Thank you, Nicola. Very nice of you. "Reminded me of spending 10,000 hours to get good at something. He also speaks about the negative chatter in your mind, and it is important to claim even the sucky attempts. They are at least hours spent trying." So true, Nicola. I think that it is actually really important to embrace those mistakes, those things that you feel you didn't quite get right. Go back and revisit that. I hear often about artists throwing their work away, burning it, or hiding it. I try to own my mistakes wherever possible and try to learn from them And it's by doing this that I feel accelerates the learning even more. Now, we've got a long way to go. I mean, that 10,000 hour commitment is huge. And as I explained before, there's going to be more hours at the end of that process. But owning up to the mistake, that I feel is absolutely vital, because we're not in the business here of kidding ourselves. When we do that, the growth stops. Here, this is an exercise in telling ourselves the truth about where we're really at with our ability. And so feel those feelings. But if you can do that in such a way that you're not breaking yourself down emotionally, you have to get some perspective. You have to be able to say, okay, that wasn't great, but you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. We get to do it again and again and again. And by just making that commitment, again, the commitment to yourself, you'll see the improvements. The thing that's really driving me is this pursuit of mastery. I want to be a master. And I know that deep down, I'm just not. Maybe one day I'll get there. But I want to be a master, not so I can have a title or so other people can call me that, but it's because I want to understand. And to me, the definition of master is somebody who understands. But it's also somebody who knows about their capacity to gain more understanding. So therefore, the journey is never over. You have to keep going. This is really a lifelong commitment, and hopefully you never stop learning. Now, I heard a concept recently in a podcast, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to while I paint, which is called Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu. And he had a great guest on this one episode, Molly Bloom. And you might remember there was a movie that was based on Molly's story called Molly's Game. And it was a pretty good movie, but Molly herself is just so inspiring. And she gave Tom a really great interview. There were a few things that she discussed and raised in this interview. And one of those concepts was this thing she called rage to mastery. That's quite a catchy but emotive way of calling this obsessive pursuit of knowledge and wanting to master something. And that rage component, while it might have negative connotations for some people, I think her intended meaning was that she was just relentlessly, obsessively pursuing something that she would not give up on. There were another few concepts that she mentioned in the podcast. Amongst those was the self-truth, that there were no shortcuts. And here in drawing, I'm reflecting on this aspect, knowing that drawing and sketching and documenting your process and writing your name to the drawing and signing each one and charting your hours, this is an exercise in telling yourself the truth about exactly where you're at. And another thing that she mentioned in the podcast was taking stock of your weaknesses, knowing exactly where your shortcomings are and those flaws are in your character in the context that she was talking about, and really drilling down and working on those. And for me, here, this is an exercise in me showing up continuously and doing what I said I was going to do for me. One of the things that I choose to believe about myself is that I don't give up. If something's not right, I will continue to work at it until I get it right. I'm much happier with this drawing of Marlene, but I know that there's much more work to be done, so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to continue to practice.
I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Sketch Endeavor, and if you did, then please hit that like button for me. If you want to come back for more and see more of Sketch Endeavor, the Creative Endeavor podcast, or some of my painting tutorials, then make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that notification icon so you're notified when I upload another video. As always, you can find me on Instagram, and if you want to post some of your own progress of your own Sketch Endeavor journey, then make sure you use that hashtag SketchEndeavor. I'm following that hashtag very, very closely. Of course, I'm on Facebook as well. You can find me there, but most important, make sure you're subscribed to my website at andrewtischler.com/subscribe. Hit that subscribe tab, enter your name and email address, and I'm in touch with my subscribers regularly. But also, as a subscriber, you get these videos 24 hours ahead of the rest. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you again soon.